For 1,825 days she had not made a sound, not a word, not to him. The doctors called it selective mutism, a wall of anxiety no therapy had yet broken through. Then he found the drawing. A simple child's crayon sketch slid under his pillow. A house, a small girl, and a stick-figure man in a hat. She had drawn herself, and she had drawn him, right there in the family. That rancher was a man named Ben, and for 5 years the silence in his home had been a physical weight. The little girl, Lily, was his foster daughter. Every expert said not to take it personally, but how could you not? This drawing wasn't just art. It was a message, and the question it asked was one he wasn't sure he could answer. Did she finally see him as her father, or was this just another silent cry for a family she'd never had? Ben wasn't supposed to be her forever home. The file from Child Services was clear: temporary placement, emergency shelter after the incident at the last foster family. 6 weeks, they said. That was 19 months ago. He was a 42-year-old rancher living alone on 300 acres of Montana grassland, a man whose own history had taught him the cost of attachment. His wife, Sarah, had passed 8 years prior from a swift and brutal cancer. They'd been trying to have children. After she was gone, the quiet of the ranch stopped being peaceful and started being accusatory. He applied to foster almost on a whim, a desperate reach toward a purpose larger than cattle and fence lines. He told himself he had stability to offer, space, quiet. He didn't realize he was signing up for a different kind of quiet altogether. Lily arrived on a Tuesday in March with a social worker named Diane and a single blue backpack. She was 4 years old, with hair the color of wheat and eyes that didn't just avoid yours. They seemed to look through you, to point on the horizon only she could see. The file mentioned trauma-induced selective mutism. The prior foster parents reported noncompliance and withdrawn behavior. They returned her after she'd spent 72 consecutive hours hiding in a closet, refusing to eat. The incident report noted no physical abuse, just a failure to bond. Ben's instruction was simple: keep her safe, keep her fed, don't force interaction, let her come to you. So he did. He showed her the room he'd prepared, a simple space with a bed and a window that looked out on the grazing horses. He placed meals at her doorway. He spoke to her in a calm, steady voice, narrating his day as if she were a curious companion. "Gonna fix the fence on the North Ridge today, Lily. Wind's coming in sharp." She gave no sign she heard him. The first breakthrough came not with sound but with color. After 3 weeks, Ben came in from checking on a pregnant heifer to find a sheet of his invoice paper on the kitchen table. On it, Lily had drawn a chaotic, furious scribble of black crayon, so hard it had torn the paper in places. It wasn't a picture of anything. It was a feeling, rage pure and simple. Ben had stood looking at it, his chest tight. He didn't throw it away. He pinned it to the fridge. The next morning, another drawing appeared. This one was of a lopsided brown square with a yellow circle above it, a house and a sun. It was less angry. It was observational. This became their language. Every few days, a new drawing would appear. On the table on his chair, once tucked into his boot, she drew horses, the barn, a storm cloud with jagged lightning. She never drew people. Ben kept every single one. He bought her a giant box of 64 crayons and a ream of thick paper and left it in her room. He never watched her draw. The gift was silently accepted. The drawings kept coming. He reported this to Diane, the social worker, during her monthly visits. She was a pragmatic woman in her 50s who'd seen everything. She called the drawings a positive outlet but warned him not to read too much into them. "It's projective, Ben. It's not necessarily asterisk about you or this place. It's just her inner world leaking out." But Ben couldn't help it. He was reading into them. The drawings were the only window he had. Meanwhile, the official machinery of the child welfare system ground on. There were court dates, reviews, assessments. Lily's biological mother's parental rights had been terminated 2 years prior due to severe neglect and substance abuse. Her whereabouts were unknown. There was no father listed. Lily was, in the cold legal terminology, a ward of the state. The goal, Diane explained, was permanency. For most children, that meant adoption. But Lily's profound silence and her file's list of behavioral challenges made her what they called a hard-to-place child. A psychologist from the Regional Children's Hospital, a Dr. Evans, evaluated her. Ben sat in the waiting room sweating through his shirt. The report came back a week later. It confirmed the selective mutism diagnosis, likely stemming from early childhood trauma. It noted severe social anxiety and possible attachment disorder. The recommendation was for specialized therapeutic preschool and, quote, a stable, low-stimulus residential environment. The report also contained a single, devastating line for Ben. The caregiver reports unilateral communicative attempts via child's artwork. While a positive sign of engagement, these should not be misinterpreted as the formation of a secure attachment bond, which requires reciprocal interaction. In other words, her drawings didn't mean she loved him. They just meant she wasn't completely broken. Ben folded the report and put it in a drawer. He felt like he'd been graded and found insufficient. The seasons turned. A year passed, then 18 months. Ben stopped mentioning the temporary part. Diane stopped bringing it up. Lily started school at the local elementary in a special education classroom with a teacher trained in alternative communication. She used picture cards to point to her needs. She still did not speak. At home, the drawing ritual continued, now accompanied by small, tangible shifts. She would sit at the same table as him while he ate, drawing quietly. She began to feed the barn cats, her movements slow and deliberate. Once, during a thunderstorm, she appeared silently at the door of his study, her blanket in hand, and sat on the floor near his feet until the storm passed. It was proximity, not interaction, but it was something. Then last Tuesday, Ben found the family drawing. It wasn't with the others. It wasn't left out in the open. He found it when he went to change his sheets, the paper crinkling under his pillow. He pulled it out and the world narrowed to that single page. The bright, careful lines, the green house with a red door, the small, yellow-haired stick figure labeled with a wobbly L, and next to her, a taller stick figure with a triangle hat, a cowboy hat. Under it she had written, in letters that leaned and stumbled, Ben. He broke. The sob that came out of him was a physical shock, a dam breaking after a 5-year drought. He sat on the edge of that simple wooden bed, the paper trembling in his hands, tears he couldn't stop falling onto the crayon wax. She had drawn him and her family. She had written his name. For 2 days he carried the knowledge like a secret sun in his chest. He didn't know what to do with it. Should he thank her? Acknowledge it? Would that shatter the fragile magic? He decided to wait, to see if she would say something or draw something else. On the 3rd day, a different car came up the gravel drive. Not Diane's sedan, a newer, official-looking SUV. A woman and a man in professional clothes got out. They had a folder. Ben met them on the porch, his heart suddenly a cold, hard stone in his throat. The woman introduced herself as a placement coordinator from the state's adoption exchange. The man was a family facilitator. They were polite, smiling. They said they'd been reviewing long-term temporary placements and Lily's impressive progress notes. They said they'd found a potential match, a pre-adoptive family, a couple, both therapists, living in Bozeman. They had a specialized practice in childhood trauma. They had a room ready. They were, in the coordinator's words, uniquely equipped to meet Lily's complex needs. They wanted to schedule a visit, an introduction, the first step toward transition. Ben stood on his porch, the Montana wind biting at his neck, the image of that crayon family burning behind his eyes. They had found the perfect family on paper, and they were going to take her away. Ben didn't let them finish. No, he said. The word came out flat, final, and hung in the cold air between them. The coordinator's smile didn't fade. It just tightened at the edges, becoming professional and pitiful. Mr. Hayes, I understand this is difficult, but this isn't a request. It's a notification of the next phase in her care plan. They laid out the timeline, a meeting with the prospective parents, the Carlsons, in 10 days, a series of gradual therapeutic visits over the following month, transition to their home in Bozeman by the end of the quarter. The language was sterile: disruption avoidance, trauma-informed transition, concurrent planning. Ben heard only one thing: they were taking her. He stood there, his rough hands curled at his sides, and asked the only question that mattered. Did anyone ask Lily what she wants? The facilitator, a younger man with a tablet, spoke softly. Mr. Hayes, given Lily's communication profile, her wants are inferred through behavioral cues and expert assessment. The Carlsons are experts. This is what's best for her long-term development. After they left, Ben stood on the porch until the cold seeped into his bones. He walked back inside, the silence of the house now a screaming thing. He went to the kitchen, pulled the folded family drawing from his pocket and smoothed it on the table. Then he picked up the phone and called Diane. Her tone was different, wary. Ben, I was going to call you. I just got the update. The Carlsons, their profile is impressive. They have a success rate with high-needs kids that the department loves. Did you know about this? He asked. A pause. I knew her case was being reviewed at the state level. I didn't know they'd moved so fast with a specific match, she sighed. Ben, you have to understand. From the system's perspective, you're a single middle-aged man with no formal training, living in an isolated area. They see a loving home, yes, but not a therapeutic home. The Carlsons, they represent a solution. So that's it. After 19 months, I'm just a parking spot. It's not like that. You've done incredible work. Her progress notes are why she's even adoptable now. But the goal was always permanency. And the state's definition of permanency is a legal adoption. She hesitated. You never started the process to adopt her yourself, Ben. The sentence hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't. The idea had felt too vast, too presumptuous. He was just keeping her safe day by day. He'd assumed that if he did a good job, the system would let her stay. It was a fatal miscalculation. He spent the next 48 hours in a state of frantic research. He learned about the Adoption and Safe Families Act, a federal law that mandated states move children to permanent homes quickly. He learned that concurrent planning meant the state was always working on a backup adoption plan, even while she was with him. He read about the best interests of the child standard, a phrase so broad it could mean anything a judge or social worker needed it to mean. He called 3 family law attorneys. The first 2 listened, then gave him the same verdict. As a foster parent, he had limited standing. He could attend court hearings, but he couldn't stop a transition plan approved by the state. The third attorney, an older woman named Gail Simmons with a reputation for taking on difficult cases, was more blunt. Ben, you're not a relative, you're a resource parent. The state sees you as a service provider. You provided a service, stability, and now they're moving her to a different service provider they deem more specialized. To fight it, you'd have to petition to become a party of interest in her case. You need to prove that moving her would cause specific, demonstrable harm that outweighs the benefit of a pre-adoptive home, and you'd need to do it fast. How do I prove harm? Ben asked, his voice raw. With evidence, not feelings, hard data, medical, psychological. You'd need an expert to say that removing her from your home would be catastrophic to her mental health, and even then, you're up against the state's experts who will say the opposite. Ben hung up, the weight of it crushing him. He had a crayon drawing. The state had 2 therapists with degrees. The meeting with the Carlsons was held at a neutral location, a conference room at the county social services office. Ben brought Lily. She wore a dress he'd bought her, blue with small white flowers. She held his hand as they walked in, her grip tight. The Carlsons, Mark and Alina, were exactly as advertised, warm, attentive, professional. Mark had a gentle voice. Alina had eyes that missed nothing. They had brought a gift, a professional-grade sketchbook and a set of high-quality colored pencils. They didn't try to force Lily to interact. They spoke to Ben, asking thoughtful questions about her routines, her favorite colors, her reactions to storms. They praised his care. It was disarming. They were good people. This was the worst part. If they had been villains, it would have been simple. But they were just another solution, a better one on paper. Throughout the hour, Lily did not let go of Ben's hand. She did not look at the Carlsons. She stared at the wall, her body angled toward Ben. When Alina softly asked if she'd like to see the new art supplies, Lily turned her face into Ben's sleeve. In the car on the way home, Lily drew. She took a crayon from her pocket and a scrap of paper and drew furious, overlapping black circles until the paper was covered. Then she crumpled it into a ball and threw it on the floor of the truck. That night Ben found a new drawing on his pillow. It was the house, the same one from the family drawing, but the red door was scribbled over in black, and the two stick figures were gone. In their place in the corner of the page was a single, small, brown rectangle with wheels, a car, driving away. He didn't sleep. The next morning he called Gail Simmons back. "I want to fight. What's my first move?" Her first move was to file an emergency motion to intervene in Lily's dependency case. The hearing was set for 1 week later. The cost would wipe out his savings. He didn't care. Concurrently, Gail told him he needed his own expert, a child psychologist who could evaluate Lily and testify to the bond she had with Ben and the potential damage of severing it. Ben called Dr. Evans, who had done the initial evaluation. The doctor was polite but firm. He was contracted by the state. He could not be an advocate for one side. He recommended a colleague in private practice, a Dr. Rosario, who specialized in attachment and nonverbal communication. Her waiting list was 6 months long. Gail made a call, invoking the emergency court date. Dr. Rosario agreed to a single expedited evaluation. Her fee was $4,000. Ben wrote the check. For the next 5 days, Ben existed in a state of suspended animation. He cared for Lily, he did the ranch work, but his mind was in the coming courtroom. Lily's drawings became darker, more chaotic. She stopped drawing the house and the sun. She drew boxes with locks. She drew a lone horse, separated from the herd by a thick black fence. The day before the hearing, Dr. Rosario arrived. She was a small, intense woman who spoke very little. She spent 2 hours with Lily in her room, then an hour with Ben. Her method, she explained, was observation and play-based assessment. She didn't just look at Lily's drawings. She watched how Lily interacted with Ben in the space where the drawings were created. At the end, she packed her bag and looked at Ben. "The attachment is real," she said. "It's anxious and it's fragile, but it's there." Her nonverbal cues, proximity seeking, shared attention, the affect regulation she demonstrates when you're near, they all point to a primary attachment figure. That's you. Ben felt a surge of hope. "So you'll testify that moving her would harm her?" Dr. Rosario's expression was grave. "I can testify to the existence of the attachment bond. I can say that disrupting a primary attachment is inherently harmful. But Mr. Hayes, the state's experts will argue that the harm of disruption is mitigated by a careful, therapeutic transition to a more capable asterisk attachment figure. They will say her bond with you, while real, is the bond of a survivor to a safe harbor, not the bond of a child to a permanent father. They will say she needs more than safety, she needs healing, and they will ask the court, is this rancher a healer?" Ben's hope curdled. "What's the answer?" "I don't know," Dr. Rosario said, "but I'll be in court tomorrow." The hearing was in a small, wood-paneled courtroom. Ben wore a suit he hadn't worn since Sarah's funeral. Lily was with Diane. The Carlsons were there, sitting calmly beside the county's attorney. Ben and Gail sat at a separate table. The judge, a weary-looking man named Ellis, listened as the county attorney laid out the case. He spoke of the extraordinary opportunity for Lily, of the Carlsons' expertise, of the state's duty to seek the most optimal permanent placement. He presented reports from the Carlsons' own psychologist, who had never met Lily but had reviewed her file and declared their home uniquely optimal. Then Gail stood. She presented Ben's petition to be a party of interest. She called Dr. Rosario. The doctor was clear, clinical, and devastating. She described the attachment, the communication through art, the regression in Lily's drawing since learning of the move. To remove her from Mr. Hayes, she concluded, would be to rupture her one secure relational anchor. The cost would be a deep, lasting regression, potentially cementing her mutism as a permanent fortress. The county attorney stood for cross-examination. "Doctor, you mentioned her drawings have become darker. Could that not also be a sign that the current environment is no longer serving her therapeutic needs, that she is, in fact, ready for a more sophisticated level of care?" "It could be interpreted that way," Dr. Rosario conceded. "Art is projective. It is not a definitive diagnostic tool." "And is it not true," the attorney continued, "that children with attachment disorders often form strong bonds with caregivers who provide basic safety, without those bonds representing a healthy, permanent familial connection? What some call a trauma bond." "The term trauma bond is misused," Dr. Rosario said sharply. "But yes, not all attachments are secure. My assessment is that this one has the asterisk potential for security, given stability." "Potential," the attorney repeated. "But the Carlsons offer actual therapeutic parenting, with a proven track record of creating secure attachments in children with far more severe histories than Lily's. Given the choice between potential and proven expertise, shouldn't the court choose what is proven?" Gail objected. The judge overruled. Finally, the judge spoke. He thanked everyone. He acknowledged Ben's clear love and dedication. He praised the Carlsons' qualifications. Then he delivered his ruling. "I am granting Mr. Hayes's petition to be a party of interest. He has demonstrated a significant relationship with the child. However, I am not halting the transition plan. The visits with the Carlsons will proceed as scheduled. I am ordering a full custody evaluation to be completed by an independent expert appointed by the court. That evaluator will have 30 days to assess both households and make a recommendation to the court on permanent placement. Until that recommendation is received, the current foster placement with Mr. Hayes will remain, but the transition visits will continue." Ben felt the ruling like a series of blows. He was in the fight, but the train was still moving. Lily would have to go on visits to a home that was trying to replace his. The independent evaluator was a wild card. As they left the courtroom, Mark Carlson approached Ben. His expression was kind, which made it worse. "Ben, we want you to know we see how much you love her. We're not monsters. We just want to give her everything she needs. Maybe we can work together on this transition for her sake." Ben looked at him, at this good, competent man who held all the cards. "There's no together here," Ben said, his voice low. "You're trying to take my daughter." He turned and walked away, Gail hurrying beside him. Outside, she gripped his arm. "The independent evaluator is everything now. We have to win that report. We have 1 month." Ben nodded, looking out at the parking lot where Diane was buckling Lily into her car. Lily's face was pressed to the window, watching for him. 1 month. 30 days to prove he wasn't just a safe harbor. He had to prove he was her father, and he had no idea how. The independent evaluator's name was Dr. Alan Vance. Gail's face went pale when she heard it. "He's known in family court circles as the Terminator," she told Ben. "He doesn't believe in attachment theory. He believes in structure, compliance, and measurable outcomes. And he thinks ranchers make lousy parents." The visits to the Carlsons began. They were twice a week, for 3 hours each. Diane would pick Lily up from school and drive her to Bozeman. Ben was not allowed to be present. The first time, Lily had to be physically carried to Diane's car, her body rigid, her silent scream etched in the panic on her face. Ben watched from the window, his hand pressed against the cold glass, feeling like he was betraying her with every second he didn't run outside and stop it. When she returned, she was different, not crying but hollow. She went straight to her room and didn't draw for 2 days. The third day, she left a drawing on the kitchen table. It was of 2 houses. One was their familiar greenhouse with the red door. The other was a larger, perfect blue house with a smiling sun above it. Between them was a small, yellow-haired stick figure. A line split the figure in 2. One half had 1 foot in the greenhouse. The other half had 1 foot in the blue house. The figure had no face. Ben showed it to Dr. Rosario in a frantic phone call. She was quiet for a long moment. It's a classic loyalty conflict drawing. She's literally fragmenting herself. This is the harm I testified about manifesting. But will Vance see it that way? Ben asked, the desperation clear in his voice. I don't know, Dr. Rosario said. He may see it as a child realistically mapping her options. Dr. Vance's evaluation was a 7-day marathon of scrutiny. He spent a full day at the ranch, watching, taking notes on a tablet. He observed Ben feeding the horses, fixing a fence, making lunch. He asked questions that sounded simple but felt like traps. Why haven't you pursued adoption before now, Mr. Hayes? Do you believe a child's emotional needs can be met without verbal dialogue? How do you discipline her? Ben answered as honestly as he could, but he felt like every word was being weighed and found wanting. Vance then spent a day with Lily at the ranch. He tried to engage her in structured play. He presented puzzles, picture cards, asking her to point to emotions. Lily ignored him, choosing instead to sit on the porch steps, staring at the distant hills. Vance made a note. He asked to see her drawings. Ben brought out the binder where he kept them all in chronological order. Vance flipped through, his expression unreadable. He took photographs of several, including the fractured loyalty drawing. Then Vance spent a day with the Carlsons. He toured their home, the dedicated play therapy room, the sensory integration equipment, the organized schedule on the kitchen wall. He observed a visit with Lily. Later, Mark Carlson told Ben, in a tone of collegial confidence, that Vance had been very impressed with their methodology. The pressure was fracturing Ben's life. He was neglecting the ranch. Bills piled up. He was exhausted, living on coffee and dread. The only thing that kept him anchored were the few moments of quiet with Lily. She had started seeking him out at night again, sitting silently beside his chair as he read. One night she climbed into his lap, curled against his chest, and fell asleep. He sat there for 2 hours, perfectly still, afraid that moving would end the moment and this might be the last time. With 1 week left before Vance's report was due, Gail called. Her voice was tense. I just got a call from the county attorney. They've received a supplemental report from the Carlson psychologist. It's based on their observation visits. It says Lily is making significant strides in their structured environment. It notes she made eye contact with Alina Carlson for a sustained period and accepted a glass of water from her without prompting. They're framing these as breakthrough moments, proof that the transition is working. Ben felt sick, but that's just, she was probably terrified. That's not bonding, that's compliance. It doesn't matter, it's data, positive data. And Vance loves data. We need our own data, Ben. We need something undeniable. 2 days later, Ben got his own call. It was from a young woman named Chloe, who introduced herself as Dr. Vance's graduate assistant. She was calling to schedule a final, joint observation session. Dr. Vance would like to observe Lily in a neutral, structured social setting with both you and the Carlsons present. He's reserved a playroom at the Child Development Center for Friday. Ben's mouth went dry. He wants us all in the same room. It's a standard triadic observation to see how Lily navigates between attachment figures. 10 a.m. Friday. The playroom was a small, bright space with a one-way mirror. Ben arrived first with Lily. She clung to his leg, her face buried in his jeans. The Carlsons arrived minutes later, looking calm and prepared. Dr. Vance entered last with his assistant Chloe. He gave a curt nod to everyone and said, "The session will be 45 minutes. Please interact with Lily as you normally would. I will not be intervening." The next 3/4 of an hour were a special kind of torture. Ben sat on the floor with Lily, offering her a doll. She took it, but didn't play with it, just held it tightly. Mark and Alina Carlson sat nearby. Alina softly called Lily's name, holding out a colorful stacking ring. Lily glanced at her, then looked quickly back at the doll. 15 minutes in, Mark Carlson spoke. "Ben, maybe if you gave her some space, she might feel free to explore other options in the room." Ben felt a flare of anger. This was a test, and he was being set up to fail. If he didn't give space, he looked controlling. If he did, he was abandoning her. He took a breath and gently shifted an inch away from Lily. "It's okay, Lil. You can look around if you want." Lily's grip on the doll tightened. She didn't move. Alina then did something Ben hadn't anticipated. She didn't address Lily. She addressed Ben in a warm, inclusive tone. "You've done such a wonderful job with her, Ben. Her hair is so beautifully braided today. Did you do that?" It was a disarming tactic, pulling him into a coalition with them. Ben muttered a thanks, feeling off balance. Then Mark moved. He didn't approach Lily. He walked to the other side of the room and began quietly building a tower with large, soft blocks. He didn't look at her. He just focused on the task, humming softly. It was a classic therapeutic technique, creating a low-pressure invitation. Lily watched him. For a full minute. She just watched. Then slowly she put the doll down. She stood up. She took one step toward the block tower, then another. Ben's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She was going to them. Right in front of Vance, she was choosing them. But she didn't go to the tower. She walked past it. She went to the small table in the corner where Chloe, the assistant, sat taking notes. Lily stopped in front of her. Chloe looked up, surprised. Lily pointed to the pen in Chloe's hand. Then she pointed to the notepad. Do you want to draw, sweetie?" Chloe asked, sliding the pad and pen over. Lily took the pen. She didn't sit. She stood at the table, her back to the room, to Ben, to the Carlsons, to Dr. Vance behind the mirror, and she began to draw. Her strokes were urgent, frantic. She filled the entire page. When she was done, she turned around. She didn't look at Chloe. She didn't look at the Carlsons. She walked straight to Ben, the notepad in her hand. She thrust it into his lap. The drawing was not of houses or families or fractured selves. It was a single, giant, raging scribble of black pen lines. But in the very center of the chaotic darkness, she had drawn a small, careful, perfect heart. And inside the heart, she had written 2 words, the letters shaky but legible, the first words anyone had ever seen her write. "Don't go." She wasn't telling Ben not to go, she was telling them. A message not spoken but written, a boundary, a plea. For a moment the room was utterly silent. Ben looked from the drawing to Lily's face. Her eyes were brimming with tears, but her jaw was set. She stared back at him, and in that look was everything. 5 years of silence, 19 months of fear, and a love so fierce it had finally broken through. Dr. Vance cleared his throat from the doorway. "The session is concluded. Thank you." Ben gathered Lily in his arms, the notepad clutched in his hand. He walked out past the Carlsons, who looked stunned, and past Dr. Vance, whose expression was, for the first time, unreadable. In the parking lot, Gail was waiting by her car. She'd been observing from the lobby. "What happened in there?" she asked. Ben showed her the drawing. Gail read the words, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, this is it. This is the evidence. This is her voice." But Ben was looking at Lily, who had buried her face in his neck, trembling. The cost of finding her voice had been written in the terror on her face. She had broken her own silence, not for a reward, but as a last stand. And as he held her, a new and terrible fear took root in Ben's heart. He had what he needed to win, but what had winning just cost her? Dr. Alan Vance's final report was 15 pages long. Gail called Ben the morning it was filed, her voice shaking not with fear but with disbelief. "He's recommending she stay with you, Ben, permanently. He calls the drawing the most unambiguous communication of child preference he has ever witnessed in a forensic setting. He says the Carlsons' approach, while clinically sound, constitutes an unwanted intrusion, and that forcing the transition would be actively detrimental. Ben, you won." The words didn't sink in at first. They floated around him, weightless. He was in the barn, mucking a stall, the phone pressed to his ear. He leaned against the rough wood, the smell of hay and horse filling his senses. He had won. The Terminator had ruled in his favor. The final court hearing was a formality. The county attorney, faced with Vance's blistering report, withdrew the transition plan. The judge made the ruling official. The goal of permanency for Lily was to be achieved through adoption by Benjamin Hayes. The Carlsons were not in the courtroom. Diane was. She gave Ben a small, tight smile that held a world of apology and respect. Afterward, she handed him a thick packet of paperwork, the adoption application. The drive home felt different. The sky seemed wider, the mountains more solid. Lily was in the backseat, drawing quietly. She had been different since the observation room. Quieter, but not in the old, locked way, a peaceful quiet. The frantic edge was gone from her drawings. She was back to drawing horses and suns, but now the suns had smiles. The work began. The adoption process was a mountain of its own. Home studies, background checks, financial disclosures, parenting classes. Ben attended every class, filled out every form. He sold 6 head of cattle to pay for the legal fees Gail said would be final once the adoption was through. He didn't care about the money. He was building a door, and he had the key. Lily's 6th birthday came and went. They had a small cake. She blew out the candles. She still did not speak, but she laughed. A soft, breathy sound that was the most beautiful noise Ben had ever heard. She drew a picture of the cake with the two of them beside it. The stick figure Ben had a balloon that said, in her wobbly letters, HAPY birth. Then one evening in early autumn, 3 months after the court ruling, something shifted. They were on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples. Lily was drawing in her sketchbook. She finished, looked at it for a long time, then nudged Ben's arm. She pointed to the drawing. It was the two of them on the porch, but the porch was attached to the green house with the red door. From the chimney, she had drawn a curl of smoke. And next to the house, she had drawn a small, carefully rendered sapling tree. Underneath, she had written, "Our house." Ben felt the familiar tightening in his throat. "It's beautiful, Lily, our house." She looked from the drawing to him, her head tilted. Her brow was furrowed, not in distress, but in concentration. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. A small, strained sound came out. Not a word, just a vocalized breath. Ben held perfectly still, not daring to hope. She tried again. Her lips moved, shaping a word. Her eyes were fixed on his, wide and urgent. She pointed at him, then at the drawing of the stick figure man. She took a deep, shuddering breath and pushed the air out with a force that turned into sound. Duh. The syllable was clear, soft but unmistakable. It hung in the cool evening air between them. Ben stopped breathing. He looked at her, at this fierce, silent girl who had fought a war with crayons and won, who had just shattered a 5-year silence with a single, monumental word. It was Ben. It was duh. A sob tore out of him, but he was smiling so wide it hurt. He didn't reach for her, didn't want to break the spell. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yeah, baby," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm right here." She didn't say it again. She didn't need to. She crawled into his lap, put her head on his chest, and let out a long, slow sigh. A sigh of arrival, a sigh of home. The adoption was finalized on a bright, cold day in December. The judge, the same Judge Ellis, smiled as he signed the order. He looked at Lily, who was holding Ben's hand, wearing a new green dress. "Young lady," he said, "you have a very persistent father." Lily didn't speak, but she nodded once decisively. Outside the courthouse, Gail hugged them both. Diane was there too, with a wrapped gift. "For your new room, Lily," she said. It was a set of watercolor paints. Lily accepted it, then, after a moment's hesitation, reached out and took Diane's hand briefly. It was a thank you. Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. The foster daughter box on forms was checked no. The daughter box was checked yes. Lily started first grade. With the pressure of the move gone and with the security of a permanent home, her anxiety began to loosen its grip. She started using picture cards at school less. She would sometimes whisper a single word to her teacher or to the school therapist. More. Done. Home. The drawings continued, but they evolved. She began to draw sequences like comic strips, a horse with a hurt leg, a stick figure man bandaging it, the horse running again. She was narrating their life panel by panel. And then one Saturday morning 6 months after the adoption, Ben was making pancakes. Lily was setting the table. She put down a fork, looked at him and said, her voice clear as a bell, "I want chocolate chips in mine, please." Ben froze the spatula in midair. He turned slowly. She was looking at him, a slight, challenging lift to her chin, as if she just stated the most obvious fact in the world. He didn't make a big deal. He didn't cry, though he wanted to. He just nodded, his heart so full he thought it might burst. "Chocolate chips it is," he said, his voice steady. He stirred the chips into the batter, poured a pancake, and the moment passed into the ordinary magic of their new life. The silence was gone. In its place was something better, not constant chatter but communication. Words when she needed them, drawings when words were too much, a language all their own. Ben framed the "Don't Go" drawing. He hung it in the hallway between pictures of Sarah and of the ranch. It wasn't a relic of a battle. It was a monument to a beginning. The moment her voice broke through, not to push the world away, but to ask it to stay. The Carlsons sent a card a few weeks after the adoption. It was brief, wishing them well. Ben understood then that they weren't villains. They were just another path, one Lily didn't want. He felt no bitterness, only a profound gratitude that their path had led her here, to this porch, to this life. As for Lily, the little girl who spoke through colors, she kept drawing. But now sometimes she would sit beside Ben on the old sofa, her head on his shoulder, and tell him about her day. In sentences, in words. The sound of her voice, once a ghost, was now the anchor of his world. The quiet child had found her voice. And her first word, the one that mattered most, was "duh." The story of Ben and Lily is a map of a love that refused to be silent. But it's also a spotlight on a system that nearly got it catastrophically wrong. A system that saw data where there was a child and saw a solution where there was already a home. For the experts, Lily was a diagnosis code and a set of behavioral metrics. For the state, she was a case file moving toward a predefined outcome of permanency. For Ben, she was a little girl who drew him into her world, one crayon stroke at a time. The conflict wasn't between good people and bad people. It was between two different languages, the language of systems and the language of the human heart. The drawing under the pillow was more than a child's art. It was a legal document written in the only script she had. It was a psychological breakthrough. It was a cry for belonging that was almost drowned out by the noise of better plans and superior qualifications. It asks us an uncomfortable question. How many other children are communicating in ways we've chosen not to learn how to read? Ben still has the ranch. Lily is in second grade now. She talks when she wants to. She still draws every day. The drawings are brighter, fuller, less afraid. They are the chronicle of a soul that is no longer fighting for its place but enjoying it. The silence didn't break because she was fixed. It broke because she was finally, unequivocally safe. Their victory wasn't in a courtroom. It was in the quiet moments that came after. The request for chocolate chips, the shared laugh at a clumsy calf, the goodnight hug that needs no words. It's a reminder that the most profound healing doesn't always happen in a therapy room. Sometimes it happens at a kitchen table, under a wide Montana sky, in the patient, unwavering presence of someone who chooses to stay. The system has a note in Lily's now-closed file, "Permanency achieved." Ben and Lily have a different record. It's pinned to their wall, a chaotic scribble with a perfect heart at its center and two words that changed everything: "Don't go." Sometimes the loudest message isn't spoken at all. It's drawn. And the most important thing we can do is learn to see it. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. We tell tales of the quiet battles and the loud heartbreaks, the moments that remind us what it means to be human. Thanks for watching.